to lead hundreds of people in the boardroom. In those eyes was something entirely different. I froze, realizing this was only the beginning. My name is Andrew. I'm 28. I've been working in a large corporation for 3 years, and I never thought my life could intertwine with the story of a woman 15 years older than my own mother. She is Elizabeth, our CEO. Strict, uncompromising, always flawless in her red blouses and black business skirts. To everyone, she's a symbol of power. To me, an unreachable star I could never touch. That day, the meeting dragged on for hours. I sat tense, taking notes, trying not to show how exhausted I was. She led the discussion, interrupted, asked sharp questions. But every time her gaze stopped on me, I felt a strange current in the air. It seemed she noticed more than she showed. When everyone left, I remained. Honestly, I hadn't planned to stay. I was just delayed with some papers. And that was when she said the words that changed everything. Andrew, stay. I didn't even immediately realize it was a request, not a command. In her voice was a note I had never heard before. I turned back and we were alone. She sat leaning back in her chair, already without that cold mask. Her hands nervously played with her ring. For the first time, I saw in her not only a leader, but also a woman tired of holding everything under control. You did well today, she said, and it sounded almost warm. I replied that I was just doing my job. She smiled, but there was sadness in her smile. Then she added, sometimes the hardest thing is to stay strong when everyone expects it from you every single day. Her confession caught me off guard. She, whom I had always seen as an unshakable rock, suddenly opened a door into her inner world. I felt I had to say something, but no words came. My head spun with thoughts. Why was she opening up to me? Why now? Silence stretched on. I could only hear the ticking of her expensive watch. And then she looked me straight in the eyes and said, there are things I can't talk about with others. They only see power in me, not the person. In that moment, I realized I was standing at the threshold of something dangerous and at the same time irreversible. I could no longer look at her as just my boss. And though my mind screamed, stay out of this, my heart beat as if it had already made the choice for me. I didn't know how it would all end, but I knew one thing for sure. After that evening, I would never be the same again. I never thought she would ask me to come back to her office after hours. Elizabeth had always kept a distance so sharp you could cut glass with it. Yet that evening, as people filed out of the building, her message reached me through the assistant. Andrew, she wants to see you alone. I hesitated at the door. The office, usually so bright and buzzing during the day, was now bathed in the glow of 2 soft lamps. The city stretched out behind the glass walls, skyscrapers shimmering like a field of stars. And there she was, sitting not behind her desk, but on the small sofa near the window, a glass of wine in her hand. It was the first time I had ever seen her like that. Sit, she said, her voice lower, almost weary. I sat opposite, clutching my folder as if it were a shield. She poured me a glass, and for a moment we didn't speak. It wasn't awkward silence. It was something heavier, something I couldn't define. You know what they expect of me, don't you? She finally asked. To be flawless, to never stumble, to fight like a machine. I nodded, though I wasn't sure if she needed an answer. Her eyes found mine sharp but trembling. But I'm not a machine, Andrew. I'm tired. Sometimes I wonder if any of them even remember. I'm human. I wanted to say something clever, something that would ease her burden. Instead, all that came out was the truth. I see you as human. The moment I said it, I regretted it. It sounded naive, maybe even inappropriate. But she didn't laugh. She studied me as if the words meant more to her than I realized. We talked for what felt like hours. Not about quarterly reports or investors, but about loneliness, about the pressure of being the only woman at that level of power, about losing her husband years ago and never really finding someone who saw her beyond the CEO title. For the first time, I saw Elizabeth not as my boss, but as a woman trapped in her own success. But the world outside that office wasn't blind. Thomas, her deputy, had already begun circling. He was clever, ambitious, and I could tell he had noticed something. Earlier that day, He'd smirked at me in the hallway, saying, "Careful, kid. Flying too close to the sun gets you burned." I brushed it off then, but now his warning rang in my head. And yet, in that quiet office with her sitting across from me, I couldn't make myself care about Thomas or his schemes. She reached for the folder in my hands, gently pushing it aside. Her fingers lingered a second longer than necessary, and then she whispered, "You don't even realize what you're getting into." The air seemed to thicken. My heart pounded, but I couldn't move. I didn't know if she was warning me, testing me, or simply admitting what we both felt growing between us. When I finally left her office, the city felt different, the night heavier. I knew then that a line had been crossed, and whether it would destroy me or save me, I had no idea. Rumors travel faster than truth. That's something I learned quickly after that night in Elizabeth's office. It didn't matter that nothing had happened. All it took was one person leaving the building late, another catching a glimpse of me walking out of her office, and suddenly whispers were flowing through the corridors like smoke. First, I tried to ignore them. People always talk. But then Thomas started fanning the flames. He didn't come at me directly. He was smarter than that. Instead, he would smile in meetings, make little jokes under his breath, and drop suggestive remarks to the board. "Some of us put in long hours, but not all of us put them to the same use," he said once, eyes flicking to me. Laughter followed. Mine was the only face that stayed stone cold. I began to feel eyes on me everywhere I went. In the elevator, in the cafeteria, even in the lobby, Elizabeth tried to act as if nothing had changed. But I saw the tension in her shoulders. The more she pretended, the more people suspected. It was a trap. We were damned if we hid, damned if we didn't. One afternoon, as I left a meeting, a woman approached me, Sarah. I recognized her immediately, Elizabeth's old friend, someone who had been close to her since college and still consulted on some of the company's charity projects. She was kind-looking, but her expression was firm. "Andrew," she said quietly, "I know Elizabeth trusts you, but trust can become a weapon in this place. Don't let her destroy herself by leaning too much on you." I froze. The way she spoke, it wasn't an accusation. It was almost protective, as if she was worried for Elizabeth more than for me. I tried to respond, but all I managed was, "She's stronger than anyone gives her credit for." Sarah gave a sad smile. "Strength is not the same as invincibility." And then she walked away, leaving me with more questions than answers. Meanwhile, Thomas grew bolder. I caught him once outside Elizabeth's office, leaning against the wall as if waiting for me. "You know," he said, "it's not the CEO's job to play favorites. People are watching. One mistake and she falls. And when she falls, she won't be the only one dragged down." It was a threat, plain and simple. I wanted to punch him, but I didn't. I knew that was exactly what he wanted, to provoke me into something reckless. Instead, I walked past him, though my blood boiled for hours after. The breaking point came one late evening. Elizabeth had asked me to bring her some documents to review. It was innocent, just work. But as I stepped into her office, I saw movement down the hall. 2 employees stood there pretending to chat, but clearly watching us. Their eyes darted between her door and my face, hungry for confirmation of their suspicions. I closed the door behind me, my heart pounding. "They saw us," I whispered. Elizabeth didn't flinch. She kept reading the papers, her voice calm but heavy. "Let them see. The truth doesn't matter here. Perception does, and perception is already against us." For the first time, I realized how dangerous this was becoming. It wasn't just gossip anymore. It was a weapon, a storm gathering with our names written on it. And yet, standing there watching her under the soft lamplight, I knew something else, too. I wasn't going to walk away no matter the cost. The day of the presentation felt like walking into an ambush. I could sense it from the moment I entered the boardroom. The air was sharp, charged, filled with polite smiles that meant nothing good. Elizabeth sat at the head of the long glass table, her expression calm, composed, but her eyes carried a flicker of storm. Thomas sat 2 seats down, leaning back with that smug, self-satisfied grin that always made my stomach turn. The presentation itself went smoothly at first. Financial updates, projections, the usual dance of numbers and promises. But then Thomas leaned forward, tapping his pen against the table. Some of us, he said casually, have noticed certain patterns in decision-making. Unusual reliance on particular individuals. I felt every gaze shift toward me. My throat tightened. Thomas didn't say my name. He didn't have to. The implication hung heavy in the air. He's saying she's compromised. He's saying it's because of me. Elizabeth didn't flinch. Instead, she set her pen down, her voice steady and sharp as steel. If you're suggesting I don't know how to lead this company, Thomas, then say it plainly. Don't hide behind insinuations. The room went silent. Thomas smiled almost lazily. All I'm saying is that personal attachments can cloud judgment, and this company cannot afford blurred lines. My hands clenched under the table. I wanted to shout to defend her, but before I could, Elizabeth spoke and her words stunned me. Andrew is not just another employee, she said firmly. He is my most trusted advisor. If that makes you uncomfortable, so be it. I will not apologize for recognizing talent where others are too blind to see. A ripple spread across the table. Shock, disapproval, whispers. Thomas's smirk widened. He had forced her into the open and she had answered heeding. But in that moment, looking at her, I didn't see defeat. I saw defiance, and it made me want to stand beside her. No matter what came next, the meeting ended in strained silence. I followed her out, my heart pounding. When we reached the elevator, I finally spoke. Why did you say that? You put yourself at risk. She turned to me, her face softer now, her armor slipping. Because it was the truth, and I am done living in fear of the truth. That night, she invited me to her home. I hesitated before stepping inside. It felt like crossing another invisible line. Her house was warm, elegant but not cold, filled with traces of a life lived. Books on the shelves, photos tucked discreetly into frames. She poured us tea, not wine, and for a long time we sat in silence. Finally, she spoke. I lost my husband 10 years ago. Since then, I've built walls so high even I forgot what was on the other side. You've shaken them, Andrew, and it terrifies me. Her voice faltered. She looked at me, eyes glistening. I'm afraid of losing you, but more than that, I'm afraid that by holding on to me, you'll lose yourself. Her confession hit me harder than any accusation Thomas could make. I didn't know what to say. My heart ached for her, for the strength she carried, for the loneliness she hid, for the fear she finally dared to share. All I could do was reach across the table and take her hand. She didn't pull away. For the first time, the distance between us wasn't professional or forbidden or dangerous. It was simply human. And in that fragile silence, I realized I wasn't just protecting her anymore. I was falling for her. The board convened again only a week later, and this time the tension was thicker than the city fog outside. Rumors had become accusations. Thomas had gathered his allies, whispering poison into their ears. The agenda was clear. Elizabeth's leadership was on trial. I sat outside the boardroom, waiting, my stomach twisted into knots. I wasn't supposed to be there. I wasn't even part of this meeting, but Elizabeth had insisted I come, if only to know the outcome firsthand. Through the glass wall I could see them, a dozen faces, cold and watchful, circling her like vultures. Thomas was in his element. This company cannot afford personal entanglements to dictate executive decisions, he declared, his voice smooth, confident. Our CEO has compromised herself and by extension all of us. His gaze flicked toward me in the hallway. It was a dagger without words. For a moment, I thought Elizabeth would deflect, hide behind polished arguments. But she didn't. She rose slowly, her posture straight, her eyes sharp, and said, "Yes, I have relied on Andrew because he is competent, loyal, and courageous when others are cowardly. If that reliance is a flaw, then I accept it. But don't mistake loyalty for weakness. It's the reason this company stands today." Silence for a heartbeat. The entire room froze. Some faces softened, others hardened. Thomas leaned back, his smile brittle, as if he hadn't expected her to wield honesty as her weapon. The vote dragged on every second, a hammer in my chest. When it ended, Elizabeth remained CEO, but narrowly. Thomas had failed to unseat her, but he wasn't finished. I knew he would keep circling, waiting for us to stumble. That evening, Elizabeth and I sat in her living room. The fire crackled, casting a warm glow across her face. She looked at me with tired eyes, but there was something lighter in them, too. Relief, perhaps, or resignation. They wanted me to choose today, she whispered. Power or peace? And I've made my choice. She paused, her fingers brushing the rim of her teacup. The title doesn't define me. You do? I felt my throat tighten. Elizabeth. No, she interrupted softly. Listen, I've spent years pretending that the company was enough to fill the emptiness. But tonight, watching them circle like predators, I realized something. If I have to stand alone at the top, then I don't want it. I want a life, and I want it with you. The weight of her words crashed into me. I thought about everything we risked. My career, her legacy, the endless whispers. Yet in that moment, none of it mattered. Because for the first time, she wasn't my CEO. She was simply Elizabeth, a woman who had chosen me and who dared to step down from her pedestal to be human again. I took her hand, holding it as if it were the only anchor left in the world. Outside, the city roared, uncaring of our decision. But inside, the silence was ours. The storm wasn't over. Thomas was still out there. The board would never truly forget. But as I looked at her, I knew we would face it together. And maybe, just maybe, that was the victory neither of us had expected to.